Hey everybody, how's everyone doing? This is the Equinox edition of the IQ with DRW. I'm Jerry McHugh Jr., Sound One Resources, and welcome to this month's Improving Our Sound One IQ. Thanks for being here. I know how valuable your time is, so appreciate you joining in today. I'm so pleased to have as our IQ guest today, David Ramsden-Wood, DRW, Uber executive, oil executive, BD guy, engineer, prognosticator, thinker, energy expert, author. Sometimes David gets controversial, and I like that. He's a data guy. I like the stuff he does. It's awesome. But his hot take of the day is one of my favorites podcasts. He offers a variety of oil and gas and energy topics. He's always speaking his mind. I like that. David's an author. What the frick is wrong with everybody else is his book. Tagline, What They Didn't Teach You in Business School. 4.9 out of 5 stars on Amazon. And his hot take of the day, as some of you may know, has morphed into a growing popular oil and gas energy and discussion network. And so this takes a lot of practice. So I always look to David because he's so natural at it. So thanks for being on the IQ and kicking off this year, David.
I'm excited to be here. It's always fun, and I think to the comment and the question that you had around, why these forums, I think it's incumbent on people in the industry to be able to have a platform that reaches out, obviously to industry people, but then also I think beyond industry, to be able to have the conversations that are important. And I was up at the Energy Strong golf tournament up in Windsor this week. Last week, I guess now. Time flies. Has it been 14 days yet? And Chris Wright talked about, it's incumbent on our CEOs. And I think of Darren Woods, I think of Mike Worth, I think of Vicky Hollub, I think of Chris Wright. And all these people need to be using their platform to get out the message that explains why European gas prices are high, why energy prices are high, what energy poverty is, what the trade-offs of CO2 are. So I commend you for your audience and what you've been doing to get the word out, both on San Juan, but our industry and the great people in it and the great things that we do. So thank you for that.
You betcha. Well, one of the benefits of the pandemic, for sure. I never would have predicted I'd be showing up on the third Tuesday of every month with a thing, trying to get outside of myself and all that. But so you're with Hitachi Vantara in business development. What directions have you been going here lately? What's your focus towards the end of the year and into 2022?
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things. As you know, I've been in the industry for 20 years. For those who don't know me and are listening in, long-time engineer, business development, reservoir, turned operations. We had a small private equity company in the Permian. We sold it in 2018. I stayed with the buyer until 2019, and then was retired, which was a good outcome for me. I think a good outcome for the team, and they're drilling our asset. It's hard to imagine the little asset we put together is $1 billion asset now. Yeah, it's incredible. It's truly, there's no other industry that can turn capital like we do. Especially when you know the type curves and you understand the area like you do in the same one. But so I took 18 months off, and obviously coronavirus fell right in the middle of it. And so I had wanted to do something different and thought about doing sort of a social media thing. I learned a lot about censorship, free speech, section 230, a lot of this stuff, and ultimately decided that me being retired with 40 years to go until I die, based on the average life expectancy of a man, I said I need to go back to work. And so I was very fortunate. Hitachi Vantara is an IT consulting company, huge. This is the Japanese Hitachi. We make trains and wind turbines, and we have consulting. And so they wanted to help expand their business development in oil and gas. And I was looking to do something again. And as much fun as it is to write and talk and spark conversation, it didn't pay the bills, and I missed having a purpose. So I came out of retirement, and now we're doing that. And I think, Jerry, you and I have talked about this in the past. I still believe that in the grand scheme of oil and gas, there will be 10 super majors and then some privates like yourself, and then of all different sizes. I think the ESG pressures are real. I think shareholder returns are real and tough. And that at the core, our industry only has so many locations we can drill. And so unlike a cigarette company, you can continue to manufacture cigarettes every year and sell billions of them, and you can trade at a multiple. Exxon only has so many sticks. And so I think at the core, things like we saw yesterday with Conoco buying Shell, things like we saw with Woodside taking BHP's oil and gas business, things like we saw with Pioneer taking DoublePoint. We're going to see this mass consolidation down to these huge companies. And I think data and technology are going to play a large role in that.
So you're in a good spot there.
I think so. I think so. I think so. But more importantly, I get to talk to people with purpose again. And if I can't help them save money on their IT, now obviously these are huge companies, right? SAP, Oracle, managed services, stuff like that. But if we can't save them money, they know from my internet personality that I'm a straight shooter. And so if I look at your project and I'm like, I don't know why you would do this, I think that works. So that's the Hitachi thing, but obviously I'm still deeply involved in energy. I still do the hot take of the day. I still have the podcast, and I like to have conversations around real data.
Yeah, you sure bring it to the table, for sure. So we talked about the oddball questions. What is your superpower?
Oh, wow.
Digress there.
My superpower, that's a really good question. So can I be like, can I have a superhero alter ego? Can I do that? Is that like a superpower?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a kind of an open-ended question.
Okay, so I identify, I know this is going to kind of come across funny. I would identify with Batman and the Christian Bale version of Batman, because he's just a regular guy that dresses up in a suit that is my zero F's to give about people's opinion of me. So that's my bat suit, and I go out and I fight, injustice. And I kind of joke, like, I almost gave up the hot take of the day in 2019 for a little bit, and I almost signed off with Batman, and it was sort of like there's a quote, something along, you either die a hero or live long enough to become a villain. And I went from being a villain to kind of being like a guy who called some of the issues in oil and gas, and then I was back to a villain because I was talking about some other things. And so I said, maybe now's the time to go. But anyway, so if I was a superhero, I'm going to go with Batman.
Okay.
There you go.
And so what sort of trademark thing does David do, which makes your wife or kids roll their eyes? It says something about you we wouldn't otherwise know. So how does this behavior help you personally, professionally, or does it? Or does it hurt you?
I like it. Well, okay. So obviously we were very fortunate with One Energy that I was able to achieve some level of financial freedom to be able to retire. But this is my phone, which you can see is cracked. I've dropped it like 1,000 times, and I will not replace it because I don't want to spend the money until it stops working. And so like it discharges batteries in like 4 seconds. I buy underwear on Amazon for like $30 for a dozen. I'm an extremely cheap and frugal person, and I sort of like, so that's something I don't think a lot of people would appreciate. I like expensive dinners, but I don't like expensive wine. So like, Barolo Grill, for those in Denver, is my favorite restaurant, and you just knock out the tasting menu, and I have no problem with that. But like,
order a soda.
Yeah, get me to replace a phone, and it'll never happen.
Well, I just thought I'd throw those out to try to get. I mean, one of the stories I really like about you is your how you were looking at colleges, and you got into Princeton, and your family got together. They were looking at the data, the cost, and you decided you're going to go to Calgary, University of Calgary, and turned down the opportunity to play squash at Princeton. And I mean, that just says something that, kind of a little mark or point that was like, okay, this says a lot about DRW.
Well, and I think about it. And so for the parents out there, and Jerry, I know, you talked about my son and his high school golf. I have 2 sons. I have 16 and 14. The 16-year-old is a high school golfer, and he's improved incredibly in 2 years. It's almost shocking, actually. And then my 14-year-old is a hockey player. So we think about colleges, but when I go back to 95, when I was recruited, I think is what it was, something like that. The cost of Princeton was $28,000 a year, US, and I was Canadian, so that's 40, which was a lot. The cost of my University of Calgary engineering degree was $3,000 a year, and I had full scholarships through my high school honor roll to pay for it. So like just from that magnitude, it was like 13 times more expensive to go to Princeton, which didn't have an oil and gas engineering program. And to be really an engineer, you needed a master's. So that seemed weird to me. But I look at it today, Princeton is $70,000 a year. 70. Now, the average student takes not 4, but 5 years, which means that parents are investing $350,000 for their kids to go for 5 years, come out with a degree, scale that up for taxes. You've paid $550,000 of before tax income, which like at the median salary in America is 10 years of salary, not paying anything else, for your kid to come out and get an entry-level job. I think that college and the decisions we make around prestige are crazy. And so I hope to live the way I preach. And so for my son, he will go to a golf school where he gets a scholarship, and it will be the cheapest possible. And so as long as he can play golf and accomplish the goals he wants and take a degree that he will use to get a real job, not underwater basket weaving, at the cheapest cost that he will pay for with jobs, etc., that's how college works. And if it doesn't, I'd rather take $550,000 and quite frankly buy an apartment building and have him be the manager than invest it in some bad. So that's how I look at the economics of life and choices and trade-offs. And that I think underscores the whole hot take of the day is, coronavirus has a cost, but it also has like a trade-off benefit. And the Federal Reserve interest rates have a cost, and then they have a benefit. So it's like you can't look at one without the other. And so everything I do, I try and do the full trade-off analysis. I might be wrong, but that's how I look at the world.
Well, you probably had a more balanced experience at Calgary than you did at Princeton. You might have been around a bunch of elites. They don't have they're kind of a barbell kind of a college, I'm sure, with all sorts of elites on one end and a bunch of poor people on the other that get it full aid. Right. And the people in the middle, like you, or struggle or they do whatever. So yeah, much better life experience. So we're gonna move over into work. Work has gotten a bad rap recently. Yeah. So my motto has been work is love made beautiful. So work like heck. I adopted that after quitting my dad's company in 1989. It helped me to move forward, use it to motivate myself. My first full-time job at Dugan Production was in 1980. And I think Laura's going to put something on the screen here showing that. Anyways, I was that is epic. I'm that knucklehead right in front of Mr. Dugan there. I was land guy. It's 1981. I had already been working for McHugh by 1987, but so I really wonder what the next generation is going to do with or without work. Work from home, don't work, get universal income. I mean, it seems like the world is full of a lot of takers these days. So DRW, what's your take on this? Obviously you're a bit different of a gen than I am. Yeah, I think I was born in 77, so I think I'm a Gen X, but I'm not totally clear. I've never really identified, which is an important thing, I guess. I've never identified as a generation. But okay, so having come back to work after 18 months, and I'll tell you, One Energy was actually funny. We started in 2016. It was 100% online. So it was a work from home model. We had a partner in New York, a partner in Dallas, a partner in Houston, and a partner in Denver. And the thing that we said, the benefit was we could have any meeting with either capital providers or any company in the 3 major cities plus New York within an hour. And we had no well files. We did everything online. The difference was we were very small. We were 7 people at the peak. All of the operations team I had worked with, and they had worked with me for years. So we knew each other very well. They'd established a reputation. It was a flat organization with no promotions. It was just do your job, sell the company. And it worked. Now, after 18 months, I've come back to Hitachi, which is a massive, I think Ventara is a 3,500 person company. Hitachi worldwide is 350,000 people.
and we're still in a work from home kind of model. And I'll tell you, as a new person, I feel like a college kid, but I don't know the politics of who the senior leaders are. I never have FaceTime with them. I'm not engaged in the culture. I'm very transactional. I could trade in and out. I work at my own pace. And what I find funny is everyone who says, oh, I love work from home. I've never worked so hard, and my time is being taken by my bosses, and like I've never been so productive. But then you follow up and you say, so would you encourage working from home? And they say, well, yeah, definitely. I love work from home. Well, okay, well, what are they going to say? Actually, I get up, I have a nap, I never shower, I walk my dog, I get my kids to school, I do the dishes while I pretend to work. Like, there's so many trade-offs on productivity, and the people who like work from home tell you it's great. I hate work from home. I don't even know there's an office to go to, but I think work from home is very tough in a large organization. And I think that productivity is a real problem. And I actually believe overall the vaccine mandates have nothing to do with employee health. They have to do 100% with forcing people back to the office after 18 months of home. And the only way companies can protect their liability is to say, well, we've mandated vaccines on everyone, so get your ass to the office because now you have no excuse. That's what I actually think the vaccine mandates are about. I don't think it's about productivity or work, or it is about productivity. It's not about workplace safety.
Well, I noticed this summer we got to NAPE, and actually summer NAPE in Houston was more crowded than I remember summer NAPE to be. There was a lot of people there.
100%. And how many people are like, oh, I'm very afraid of coronavirus, but I had a great trip to Mexico. I'm seeing my parents this weekend. My kid's soccer game is amazing, and we had a community barbecue.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't make a lot of sense intellectually consistent.
So here we are at NAPE summer of 2021. We had a great dinner with some guys out at Fwad's in oh my gosh, somewhere in Houston shopping center. It's just amazing. It was so much fun to be with people. I know we've got another photo here Lori's going to put up of this is one of my favorite photos of our drill site inspection, being with people. We're here in the middle of the Carson Forest. This is before the pandemic.
Yeah.
But you're out working with people. You're out. I just don't know how the work from home people are going to say, oh, how do we build community? How do we build team? Even the people that don't work for money, that want to check, they're just taking. I mean, one of the values I get so much from work is being able to contribute and know that I'm helping in society. And I may not be something very, very altruistic like curing cancer, but heck, we provide a little bit of energy for companies. We make a little bit of money doing it, and we have a lot of fun with our team and with people like that. So.
I mean, to be honest, and I think this is where the industry needs to do better. You say you're not curing cancer, but you know what you are curing? You're curing people in Minnesota in the middle of winter, the need to burn every single forest in America for heat. Because when we didn't have fossil fuels, life expectancy was much shorter. And we can talk about, I always say, like from a government issue, if only the government would focus on real issues. Social Security was put in place in 1935. The average life expectancy in 1935 was 61, and you didn't get it until 65. We've expanded the life expectancy over 70 years, say 75 years, from 61 to north of 80. That is all because of fossil fuels, and it's all because we enable energy to allow us to live in different places and move goods across the country. And so I think that the work that we do in industry is more important than curing cancer, because at the end of the day, everyone's going to die of something. And yeah, it would be nice for me not to die of cancer at 40, but like I'm going to die of cancer probably at 82. And between 40 and 82, I would much rather be able to drive a car, go on vacations, live in a warm house, live in an air-conditioned house, be able to get strawberries in the middle of winter. And all of that is enabled by the work we do. And I think that that's amazing. And we should be very proud of the role we play in the world.
Oh, it's incredible industry, and also really great to be part of a group, part of a team. I mean, we're not as big or value high as Energy One, but we have a small team and we enjoy each other. There's a photo of us at one of our gatherings, either the Rockies game or just being with people. So, I mean, that made lucky for us. I mean, I think I have some younger kids and some kids just a little bit younger than you did that are, I mean, they're going to have a little more struggles as far as the work thing goes. They're going to have some more things to think about. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think
I worry a lot about my kids, and I'm sure you do too. I think that the work world is so different. And to your point, I am a transactional cog, and I don't know how I would ever get promoted, and I don't know how I would get mentored. If I was 22 and I was working from home, and Hitachi was saying, "Here's my job," I don't have any senior salespeople to teach me the tricks of the trade. I don't know. There's a ton of tools I don't know about. And when I'm with them, the best in the 120 days I've had at Hitachi or so, the best 2 days was the in-person training with 35 salespeople. I learned more about the job and people, and I was committed to my coworkers, and it was a social thing. And it's why I love like NAPE, for example. And I always make the joke on LinkedIn, I don't walk the NAPE floor anymore. I used to walk the NAPE floor because every deal that was out there, like it was like, oh, this is Mississippi Lime. I'm like, okay, so that's the play that's dead next year. Oh, this is Bakken Light. Oh, okay, so that's a dead play. But now I go to the Four Seasons bar, and I'm there from like 4 to 9, and I see everyone I want to see, and we chat about all the issues. And so that's my NAPE move. It's the power move of NAPE anyway.
no, it's and just a gathering of people. Of course, the Texas mentality is, and you're from Denver too, is sure a lot different than the Colorado mentality. Oh my gosh, it's like we can do anything down here, and you get to Colorado and say, well, I don't know if we can do this over here because it's going to piss these people off over there. I don't know. How are we going to do this? You know,
Okay.
And it's a can-do place down there in Texas, which is what I really like.
Well, so I mean, I divide it, and I'm going to make, I hope for listeners, although I can imagine the political affiliation, this is not a political comment. One of the reasons I talk about coronavirus as being so divisive, and my mother is from Canada, and she constantly emails me and says how mad she is about like Trump. And I'm like, he's not even the president anymore. But she's like, why is this so political? Why are masks political? Why are vaccines political? Why? And it's because Republicans at the core are individualist. We can do this. I can do this, and I'm going to do it for me. And Democrats are collective good. So like the world, it needs to be a great place for everyone. And I'm not saying either one is right or wrong. In Texas, by math, and in our industry, I would say by math, there would be more of the individualists than there would be of the collectivists. And so when you have a whole bunch of individualists, they want to go make shit happen. And when you have a whole bunch of collectivists, they're like, how can we all collaborate? And I just think that collaboration can be slow at times. And so I don't know if it's a Texas versus Colorado thing, although Texas is broadly Republican, therefore individualist. And Colorado now, after the Blueprint, which is a fascinating book for listeners if you haven't read it.
Oh my gosh.
It's
billionaires funded the blue
yeah, and it's
blue.
a
Holy cow.
fascinating book. I
Amazing.
strongly encourage it. But Colorado's more collectivist, and how do we, like, we worry about climate change, right? Like India and China have 350 coal plants under construction. They have the 4th and 5th largest coal reserves in the world. We're currently engaged in a trade war, and they don't trust the United States to provide them natural gas. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to use coal. And the US outsources all our manufacturing to make cheap goods in China, including solar panels, which are being built by Uyghur, like effectively slaves, and we don't care. And so, you know, this climate change thing that we're all worried about over here is just insane. It's a trade-off. Without fossil fuels, we don't have the lifestyle, and our planet can't support the population it has. And so we're always going to see coal. And I think China has done the best job at rope-a-doping us into destroying our economy with this energy transition. And Europe is the first one to experience it with the prices they're seeing right now.
Well, let's pivot to natural gas.
Yes.
The key commodity today, especially with the emissions reduction movement. Growing up, my dad was a natural gas producer as well. And around the dinner table, he'd refer to his San Juan Basin gas. And at the time, it really was the cheap blue flame. And so, you know, San Juan really didn't start to be productive until there was a market moving that gas out in 1951. I've come up with this new thing, the cheap blue flame certifiably green. And I think that says a lot about our natural gas. So I don't want to get into discussion debates or how fossil fuels don't cut it. But at the same time, I'm looking at Europe, how they're going to be caught with their pants down this winter if blackouts happen.
Oh.
My European friends, there was a great article in Bloomberg a couple of days ago how Europe is just not prepared themselves. They put all their chips on the table for renewables.
Yeah, and chips. True. We take wood pellets from the U.S., which are burning trees, but they're classed as renewables, and we ship wood overseas to be burned in Europe, which creates carbon, but it's called renewable. The biomass, and if you've seen the movie Planet of the Humans, if you haven't, it's Michael Moore, who I know is a controversial figure on the right for sure, but it's a fascinating movie. And burning wood chips and biomass is like the biggest farce in bio. But you talked about the energy crisis we're going to have in Europe. Forget that. Do you remember the polar vortex? Do you know that there were 4 times where natural gas spiked over $100 an MCF last winter in the United States? We're exporting natural gas at the highest rate we've ever exported. I think last time I looked, it was north of 11 BCF a day. We're underinvesting relative to production growth. And I think that's good. And you're seeing it in $5 gas, and storage is coming in, depending on the next 6 weeks, is coming in at below the 5-year average going into winter. And the polar vortex was caused, even though Bloomberg, which I always laugh, February 16th, Bloomberg comes out with an article that says wind is not to blame for the Texas energy crisis. Now, and the reason they said it is because even though there was 30,000 megawatts of installed wind power and it was blowing 2,000, they said, but we don't expect wind to work in the winter.
It wasn't supposed to work, right?
And so what we're
they
going to
didn't plan for fossil fuels either.
We're going to triple.
Yeah,
we're going to triple the wind so that you cannot generate power when you need it. And so I think we're going to see the worst energy crisis our country has seen since 1973 with the OPEC.
Robert Bryce on your podcast talked about we were this close to the Texas power grid just blowing up, from what I understand.
Absolutely.
And I don't totally understand that. I'm not an engineer, but it sounds like all the circuit breakers, they would have had to go reset everything everywhere, I guess, right?
There's something around a hertz. There's a delivery, and they were within like 0.2 or 0.3. So for 2 more minutes, had they stayed at that frequency of delivering, because everything was failing. And like, let's be honest, the ERCOT shut down power to oil and gas fields, which included ESPs, and ESPs run on electricity. And if you can't dispose your water or pump your wells, you can't produce gas. So that shut in many hundreds of millions a day. Like we saw, Texas gas was down like half. So from 30 BCF a day to like 15. That was a lot of us driven. But also, like in Dallas, the roads were so icy, where you were trucking water, trucks would go off the road. And so it's like a hurricane. We had a 3-day hurricane, and it caused a whole bunch of problems. And we haven't talked about energy reliability as much as we need to. So this winter, I think, is going to be fascinating. I think it's going to totally blow up the climate change move, because we're going to see a lot of deaths, unfortunately, from cold weather in places where you cannot withstand cold. And I think about Texas, it was cold. But think about Minnesota. What happens if Minnesota doesn't have power? And people are totally inelastic on their price. If you need natural gas because your house needs to be warm, you will pay any dollars, and that marginalizes poor people, which are the core of the Democratic base, who are also the ones who are most concerned about climate change because they're not paying for it. But all of a sudden, their utility bills in Colorado, as you know, Xcel Energy spent $1.2 billion over 4 days to buy natural gas during that period, on revenue in 2020 of $11 billion. Our power bills are going up 20% because of 4 days, and we can afford it.
Well, it's the procurement practices too. I mean, everyone wants to buy the cheapest. They want to buy it cheap on the day. They never really look ahead and buying.
No, absolutely.
Gas. Procurement practices are by the utilities. What the utility boards tell them to do is buy cheap as you get it. So they buy it on the spot, and then they get the $100 days, and here we are. So.
Well, it's going to be.
Where do we go from here? Where do we go? How do we articulate a message to not to be with, hey, I told you so, or I mean, how do we articulate a message how important our infrastructure is for natural gas and oil, and that, I mean, we are where we are because of what we just talked about, natural gas being so great.
Well, so I think it's a couple things. Number one, Mike Wirth is the CEO of the most valuable oil and gas company in America, and he is not on television saying what I'm saying. And so we have 42 people listening in on this, which is neat. Mike Wirth would have hundreds of thousands and
Right.
could go and say exactly the same thing that I'm saying. But for whatever reason, we're worried that if we push back, that people are going to cancel you. And so again, the great thing about the hot take of the day, it's a small platform, but I can't be canceled. No one can fire me. No one can take away my money unless the IRS comes and says, free speech is dead. We're going to fine you all your money because of what you say. So number one, we need people to talk about it on TV and push back on the narrative. And that can only be done by our CEOs who are currently choosing not to do it. And it's one of the reasons I like Vicky Hollow. She stood up against the carbon tax, which is horrible. And they're working on a direct air capture system, which I think is stupid. Not as a business, but the government to pay you to suck air out of the sky and get rid of CO2. Like, it's so dumb. It's like a urine titration in a kid's pool. It just is not going to have any effect whatsoever. But nonetheless, she's standing up and making a case. But number two, and I said this in March, our industry needed to shrug. Prices are up and we're not ramping up. Therefore, oil is declining, gas is declining, prices are going higher, profitability is going higher. At the end of the day, we only care about profitability. It's nice that we make the world a better place with energy, but until consumers scream at the politicians about how expensive their gas is and their utilities, they won't change policy. So the best thing we could do is shrug. And we did, and we continue to. And I think that consumers are now starting to wake up, understanding where their energy comes from, because their Tesla is now costing twice as much to charge as it did. And they thought it was all from wind and solar, which, that has no cost other than construction. So why is my Tesla charging double? Oh, natural gas. Oh, okay. So that's what I think. That's what I think comes in 2022.
So did you, we put up some slides. I gave you some earlier. I don't know if you had a chance to look at them. Your impression of the San Juan Basin. Here we have this 100 to 130 TCF reserves of Mancus that's just starting to be drilled. The Fruitland coal bed is huge. We're in the middle of the country. We don't have hurricanes come get us. We have infrastructure which has been there since the 50s. We've been up to 4 BCF a day from that first slide that Lori showed.
Yeah.
This is one of my, this one here, and you can really see the San Juan's. We're having our 100-year anniversary next month on October 21st, when the first commercial well was completed around Aztec in 1921. And but we really didn't start to get going. You can see the gas growth in the 50s, and oil obviously really took off in the 50s as well, because they were drilling through looking for gas and found a lot of oil on the way. But you can just, what are your thoughts, DRW, on this basin?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a teenager with a lot of potential. You've got a lot of potential. You got to do something here, son.
Well, so I'll tell you that first and foremost, I have long believed that natural gas should be in the 3 to 350 range. We obviously saw 250 for a very long time, and then 175 during the height of the pandemic. We're now at 5. Now, 5 feels a bit aggressive because the Marcellus and Haynesville can add a tremendous amount of gas, but it is going to take 9 months. So pricing signals are saying drill faster. But at the core, we're going to need energy. And so, the Mississippi Lime, the San Juan Basin, the Piceance Basin, these basins that really at $4 are very, very commercial, and you can drill your returns and make a lot of money. I think with appropriate hedging and with appropriate planning and appropriate cost management, you're going to be able to make returns coming out of the gas basins. Because even though we don't want to talk about CO2 emissions, since 2005, the US is down 18% in CO2 emissions, primarily in coal to gas switching. And so we have less CO2 emissions today than we had in 2005, and it is on the back of natural gas. And you can put all the money you want into wind and solar. Without batteries, it doesn't work when the polar vortex happen. Natural gas can happen. And with better redundancy on infrastructure, heat tracing on lines, making sure we don't shut off ESPs when we have a power crisis, natural gas is the fuel of the future. I've always believed that. The question is when. And so that tees up well for a San Juan Basin, a Piceance Basin to perform well when prices maintain high. And Europe is going to draw a huge amount of natural gas this winter. So we can't stop LNG because otherwise they freeze. So we're going to continue to see exports. We're going to continue to export our gas to the world. And that's going to position investors in natural gas in very good places if you get the right acquisition price.
We've got some suits against the people installing additional capacity in the Gulf and other areas for LNG. When you're kind of danged if you do, danged if you don't, on things like that. It's just, I mean, I'm sure the FERC will probably approve it without a bunch of horse trading and a bunch of baloney to have to go through. Wouldn't you think?
I think so. I mean, again, there's this big, well, we're going to shut down Keystone, but we're going to approve the Nord pipeline. We're going to shut down permitting on BLM for oil, but we're going to ask OPEC to increase production. Like this intellectual inconsistency that we're seeing from our politicians in Washington at some point comes to roost. And then we just see good policies, good projects, because we need energy and all forms of energy are good. And if we truly want to decarbonize the world, the only answer is nuclear. And it's extraordinarily expensive. There's a whole bunch of things about nuclear, but if we really want to have this conversation, we have to be talking nuclear. And yet we're decommissioning the Indian Point plant in New York and talking about decommissioning Diablo Canyon. None of these make any sense from an energy perspective in our country.
Well, I guess natural gas will fill the void.
Absolutely. It's the swing.
It'll have
and
to.
you saw it in the polar vortex. Natural gas picked up when wind and solar went down. And that is what the data showed. So natural gas is huge, and oil will continue to be huge for transportation for obvious reasons. And the fact that the airlines want to have sustainable oil and then get funded, I think there's a carbon credit of $1.50 or $2 they want if they use renewable fuels, which is just, it's a tax grab. It's like PPP. So many companies didn't need it and took it, and then the loans were forgiven. That's called free money. That's not called like preserving the economy. Right. And so a lot of these people are going for tax handouts and subsidies when they know it's not their core business, and they know they can't make money at wind and solar and renewable this and battery that, but the money's flowing and that's where money is made. So
kind of like those renewable planes where they have electric planes.
Yeah.
They can fly, I guess, about 200 miles.
Yeah, which is useless. Who needs to go 200 miles on a plane? If you're going 200 miles on a plane, you should be driving, because when you include the time to the airport, through the security, boarding, getting there, taking off, getting a rental car and getting to your place, 200 miles you can drive.
I feel so good, David. I feel so good about that, man. No emissions on my flight.
I know.
Wow, I just have a little lump in my throat because of that deal. Yeah. Okay, I got a question to ponder for all of us. And as we come up into our next month's IQ, so since 1920, the San Juan Basin has produced 48 million barrels of oil, 54 or 55 TCF of gas. So when do you think we're going to surpass those numbers in the next century, next 100 years? And I just would like people to think about that, especially when you look at the amount of production that the Fruitland coal had since 1980, 23 TCF of gas, and it's still going on. The Mancos conservatively is 100 to 110 TCF of gas in the Mancos gas window. So anyways, it's just kind of an interesting fact. Do you have any thoughts on that? I also will say fewer locations.
Right. Oh yeah, the spacing.
Not going to be every 40 acres, every 160 acres. It's going to be pad drilling. And
I did a fascinating project back in the beginning of my entrepreneurial venture in 2012. And one of the assets we were looking at was CBM in Wyoming. As it turned out, it would have been atrocious, and it shows that timing is everything. But you could see that because of the dewatering, and companies they never got off drilling at 40 acres. But once it was dewatered, you could put one well in the middle of a section and it would drain what 16 wells would, because it was permeable. And so it's amazing to me, our industry made up for technical knowledge with just investing dollars. And so we spaced wells too tight. We drilled way too many wells. We never looked at the results, and we destroyed capital. And I think had our industry been better at capital management going back to 2012, we would be already smaller, so efficient, such a cash cow, and investors could make money in our industry. Whereas public investors just generally haven't over the course of the last 10, 15 years. But yeah, it's gonna be a really interesting next 365 days. More interesting, I think, than the last 365, with the federal debt ceiling coming, inflation. There's a whole bunch of things that are coming as we head into the 2022 midterms.
Well, Dave, you've been a real motivator for me, get me psyched up for this. As a card carrying introvert, I need to get kind of pumped up here. So I really appreciate your enthusiasm and encouragement for not only me and my company, but the people we talk to and people I come into contact with every day. So it's awesome. It's awesome.
Well, I love doing this, Jerry. I really appreciate it. And I want to use the platform in the last 2 minutes. And the last thing I'll say, I wrote a post on LinkedIn 2 weeks ago, and I'm very passionate about it. I won't mention NAPE because it could happen anywhere, but it did actually happen at NAPE. And so just for all the parents out there and all the people who might not think about this is a bit of a passion project, and we're going to come out with a podcast on it probably in the next 2 weeks. But a friend of mine went to a happy hour and was handed a shot, and in that shot was GHB, which is a drug that's tasteless and smellless, and within 5 minutes had no idea who she was, where she was, what was going on.
Oh goodness.
And very, very fortunately, she was with a friend who was also drugged, but for whatever reason, the effects lasted more than 15 minutes and was able to get out of there. And when I found her in particular at the bar at the Four Seasons, really didn't know her name. And so the reason I raised this is because I don't think people think about sexual assault the way they should. And I think that sometimes we let our guard down, even in professional circumstances. And so I raised this because if I can help any parent talk to their daughter, talk to their son, that when someone's in trouble, you help them, and never put your drink down and pour your own drink, always. So anyway, I wanted to just use a little bit of time there, and anyone can reach out. But I just very passionate about protecting people. I care zero about coronavirus. I care very, very much about people not being assaulted. So there you go.
I think we like we are in our industry. We're passionate about the work we do. We're passionate about the people around us, the people we care about, the people that move this ship along. So we are a unique industry in that we're, it's been in my blood for a long time. So I actually love it. So
I love
our
it
next
very
IQ,
much.
speaking of being in my blood, we will have October 19th, Tuesday, 9 a.m., third Thursday of the month, 100 years of the San Juan Basin. I'm giving a presentation at AAPG, SJIQ at the Colorado Convention Center. And it really is a challenging task to put a 20-minute presentation together on 100 years. So I've done it. Give you guys a little sneak preview of some of these slides we have on the screen here. So we'll spend some time on that. It will be 2 days short of the when this well right here was discovered in 1921, October 21st, 1921. So, and then I'm going to have Frank Seidel join us, Seidel Technologies. Frank's been in the San Juan for over 25 years, was with BR. And we're going to talk about how companies can maximize their work, their oil field services, how to navigate today at the threshold of our next 100 years. So I'm looking forward to that. So there'll be some more announcements on that. And, I hope you learn some more about the San Juan, David. And
absolutely.
I appreciate, do you hear anything on the street about the San Juan, anything that you hear about?
I haven't really, but again, I think that the macro is setting up for natural gas, and there is only so much money you can make in this transition of flow into batteries and Uber and Airbnb, none of whom actually turn real profit. And when you have a Tesla that trades at 30 times revenue, and you have natural gas producers that don't trade at those multiples. At some point you have to make money, and that's made by creating commodities. So I think the macro sets up really well for natural gas, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it comes from. And I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much,
Okay,
Jerry.
well, thanks Lori Walters, who backed me up and produced the presentation today. Lori's been with San Juan Resources for over 15 years. Besides being the IQ producer, she's the handles all of our backroom oil and gas production, finances, budgeting, reporting. I mean, just an amazing person. So awesome, Lori.
Thanks,
really
Lori.
appreciate it. And thanks, DRW, taking time to spend with us on this amazing day. And oh, can I use your moniker here?
Do it.
To end the show. Be safe, be good, and have a great day. So bye for now.
Bye for now.